In 2016, two Argentine students set off on a journey across South American countries, hoping to take a break from their studies. Little did they know that their trip would turn into a nightmare, becoming one of the most complex and bewildering investigations on this continent. Maria Jose Coni and Marina Menegazzo, two young women from Mendoza, Argentina. In 2016, they were 22 and 21 years old, respectively. Maria Jose was studying economics at the University of Cuyo, while Marina was studying speech therapy at the University of Aconcagua. Both girls volunteered for an organization that helps homeless people. Friends and acquaintances described them as two very cheerful girls who were also very close to their families. On January 10, 2016, Maria Jose, Marina Menegazzo, and two other friends set out on a journey. They had a few days off from school, and they decided that in 2016 they would go backpacking across South American countries, specifically Ecuador and Peru. On social media, it was clear that everything was going well. They seemed very happy, showing the landscapes and the places they visited in each country. Then, on February 13, 2016, a little over a month into their trip, the group split into two. Marina and Maria Jose stayed for a few more days in Ecuador, while the other two girls returned to Mendoza. This decision was not spontaneous. It had been planned since the day they left Argentina. Maria Jose and Marina had a few more days before their classes resumed, so they decided to spend them in Ecuador, exploring a few more places. While their two friends returned to Mendoza, they chose to stay at a beach in Montanita, a place they had visited just a few days earlier. It was one of the first spots they had seen upon arriving in Ecuador. They felt drawn back to this place, captivated by its paradise-like beaches and festive atmosphere. Montanita is a haven for people from various countries, many of whom are backpackers like Marina and Maria Jose. To save some money and stretch their budget, the girls sold fruit salads and hamburgers on the beach. This allowed them to cover the cost of their hostel, which was $10 per night. As the days went by, the girls continued to share photos on social media. They looked great, uploading pictures of landscapes, enjoying the beach, swimming, and appearing genuinely happy. Their adventure in Montanita was supposed to end on February 22nd. This was because they had a flight from Lima to Chile on February 25th. The plan to return to Mendoza was as follows. From Montanita, they would travel to Guayaquil, and from there to Lima. In Lima, they planned to stay with friends for one night before flying to Chile. From Chile, they would take a minibus back to Mendoza, to their hometown, and reunite with their families. The trip seemed so well planned. The girls had already booked their plane tickets and everything they needed for the journey. Early in the morning on the 22nd, Maria Jose and Marina Menegazzo spoke with their families, packed their bags, and later that afternoon told their parents they would hitchhike from Montanita to Guayaquil. They explained that $70 had been stolen from them at the hostel, and they wanted to save a little money this way. Their relatives offered to send them money, but the girls refused, telling them not to worry. Maria Jose and Marina also reassured them that they would be out of contact for the next few days, so it would be difficult to reach them. Naturally, their families expected to speak with them when they were in Lima with their friends, or perhaps before their flight. But that never happened. All communication was lost after the afternoon of February 22nd. The flight to Chile was scheduled for the early morning of the 25th, meaning the girls should have been home in Argentina by February 26th, but they never arrived. By the 27th, their families were getting anxious. Marina's sister was the first to raise the alarm on social media. She posted a photo of the two girls with the following message. "My sister and her friend went missing on Monday the 22nd in Montanita, Ecuador. Please share." Within hours, the president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, responded with this message. The police are already investigating. Hug your parents and Maria Jose's parents. All of Ecuador is with you. The families of the girls desperately wanted to know if they had left the country, if they had boarded their flight. But they couldn't get any answers from the airline because they said they would only provide that information with a court order. Moreover, there were no reports at the border that either of the girls had traveled from Montanita to Guayaquil. This led their parents to a terrifying thought, that Maria Jose and Marina Menegazzo never even made it to Guayaquil, that something might have happened to them along the way. The disappearance went viral on social media, spreading rapidly, and two countries essentially united in the search for them, making the news even more viral so that everyone would know these two young women didn't make it home. It all came to a tragic end on February 25th. It was a Thursday, and Maria Jose's body was found in an area about 200 meters from the beach. Then, on Sunday, February 28th, Marina's body was discovered, just 40 meters from where Maria Jose was found. This is where all the strange details of the case begin. For instance, if the body was only 40 meters away, why was it found 3 days later? An autopsy was required to determine the day of the girls' deaths. There's something important to note, which will be crucial later. Maria Jose's body was found by a man who said he entered that area to relieve himself and stumbled upon the corpse. Both girls were wrapped in bags, tied up with ropes. Maria Jose was found with a skull contusion, injuries to various parts of her body, including the genital area, a fractured hip, and multiple bruises and scratches. Marina had 6 stab wounds, deep cuts that ran from her chin to her first cervical vertebra. She also had several abrasions on her face and other parts of her body. Adding to this horror, the girls had wounds on their wrists, suggesting they were tied up. According to the available information, both died on the same day, just hours or perhaps minutes apart. Their time of death was determined to be the early morning of February 23rd. A day after the second body was found, the Ecuadorian police announced at a press conference and on social media that the first arrests in the case had been made. 2 men were taken into custody. The first was Alberto Segundo Mina Ponce, and the second was Aurelio Eduardo Rodriguez, known as El Rojo. Bloodstains were found in the home of one of the accused, Mina Ponce, and among other items discovered near his house were Marina's mobile phone and backpack. What shocked everyone the most, beyond the swift arrests, was the immediate confession of these 2 men. They confessed almost instantly, a confession that left a deep impression on those following the case. The men had a whole story to tell. They claimed they saw Maria Jose and Marina Menegazzo near a bar. The girls were trying to arrange a ride, asking for someone to take them to Guayaquil, but they couldn't find anyone heading that way. According to the men, it was El Rojo who first approached the girls. He asked them what they were doing, and according to his account, the girls started telling him where they were from, what they were doing, and supposedly mentioned that they had nowhere to stay because they had been robbed that morning, that they were out of money. That's when El Rojo offered them a place to stay at Mina Ponce's house, which was relatively close by. He explained that Mina Ponce lived alone, so there wouldn't be any issues with going to his place. Then, El Rojo took them to the man's house in a taxi. When they arrived, it was around 8:30 p.m. The man claims he left them in the house and locked the door behind them. Then he went back to the bar and stayed there with Mina Ponce for several hours. Around 2 a.m., they returned to the house. The girls were still there and asked them to go buy some soda. After they came back, according to the men, the situation became tense. They said that because they were very drunk, they wanted to have sex with the girls, something the girls clearly didn't want. Maria Jose and Marina Menegazzo hadn't been drinking. They were sober, so they resisted. Allegedly, Maria Jose was the first to die. Mina Ponce confessed that he killed her with a metal object he had in the house, striking her on the head when she resisted the sexual assault. Realizing that Maria Jose was already dead, he heard a scream from the next room. It was Marina. El Rojo stabbed her 6 times, from her chin to her first cervical vertebra. These 2 men killed the tourists and didn't know what to do. According to them, El Rojo left the house and abandoned Mina Ponce alone with the bodies. This was around 3 in the morning. Mina Ponce then claimed that he started cleaning the house, wrapped the bodies in bags, tied them with ropes, and carted them away. First, he disposed of Maria Jose's body, and then he tried to get rid of Marina's. He thought the murders would go unnoticed, that no one would ever find out it was them. This version of events, according to the prosecution, was supported not only by the confessions of both men, but also by 2 witnesses, the bar owner and the taxi driver who took them to the house. The bar owner said she saw the girls around 2:30 p.m. They were asking people for a ride, but after several hours, they still hadn't found anyone. Exhausted, Maria Jose and Marina Menegazzo walked into the bar and asked for a glass of water. The bar owner offered them a bottle, but the girls declined, saying they didn't have money to pay for it because they had been robbed that morning. The woman then gave them a glass of water, and they returned to the street. It was then that El Rojo approached them. The bar owner saw them talking together and later saw them all leave in the direction of Mina Ponce's house. The taxi driver's story was similar. He said they flagged him down as they were walking. El Rojo sat in the front, while Maria Jose and Marina Menegazzo sat in the back. It's worth noting, both girls were silent the entire ride. Additionally, the taxi driver mentioned that they seemed a bit sleepy. He dropped them off at the house without asking any questions and went back to his business. To the family, this version was completely wrong. They refused to accept it. It seemed very strange to them that Maria and Marina would accept help from these men. Montanita was full of Argentinian tourists, and it would have made more sense for the girls to approach someone from their own country, explain what had happened, and ask for help. It was also bizarre that they claimed to have no money. Maria Jose and Marina Menegazzo had credit cards. They could have withdrawn money at any time. Moreover, there's another piece of evidence that contradicts this story. Maria Jose's credit card was used at an ATM located very close to the hostel where they were staying in Montanita. So, it was clear to everyone that the girls had enough money to pay for a night in one of the local hotels. This version began to fall apart, even in the eyes of the public. The brother of one of the victims shared that, when the Ecuadorian police took him to the crime scene in that house, he saw used syringes lying on the floor. When he asked about the syringes, they magically disappeared. They weren't even photographed at the crime scene, and the experts who examined the scene denied their existence. To the family, these 2 men were just a cover for something much bigger, like a human trafficking operation. While all of this was unfolding, the investigation continued. A second autopsy was ordered, along with a toxicology report. Additionally, it was revealed that both accused men repeatedly changed their stories. In one version, Mina Ponce stopped blaming El Rojo and himself for the murders. He claimed that the person responsible for taking the girls' lives was a Venezuelan drug dealer who lived in the area, known only by his alias, El Chamo. He was detained by the police, but he insisted he had nothing to do with the incident and was willing to take a lie detector test and a DNA test to prove that he wasn't even in the house. Several DNA samples were found at the crime scene: Mina Ponce DNA, the DNA of the 2 murdered girls, and a few unidentified samples. These samples did not belong to El Rojo, the supposed second killer, nor to El Chamo, who, after passing all the DNA tests, was completely cleared from the investigation. Then, the results of the second autopsy came in. The date of death changed, and this was one of those moments that shocked everyone the most. While Maria Jose's death date remained February 23rd, Marina's date of death was changed to February 25th. This means that when Maria Jose's body was found, Marina likely had only a few days left to live. This could also explain why, despite being found just 40 meters apart, Marina's body wasn't discovered on the same day as Maria Jose's. It was a very strange circumstance. People began to conclude that perhaps Marina had been kidnapped, subjected to violence, and beaten over those 2 days. The Ecuadorian police repeatedly claimed they could not find Marina due to the rain. However, upon checking the weather data on the day Maria Jose was found, there was no rain. Thus, a second autopsy might be very credible. Other facts have also been discovered. The bruises and scratches on Maria Jose were only on one side of her body, as if she had been thrown from a moving vehicle. It was also found that the girls had injuries in the genital area, confirming evidence of violence. Furthermore, something very strange was discovered. Maria Jose had a fractured thigh, which was already visible during the first autopsy, but there was no visible damage that could have caused it. An even greater shock came with the toxicological analysis. The girls were under the influence of prohibited substances. In their bodies, a substance was found that, when mixed with alcohol, creates a mixture capable of depriving a person of their own will. This explains why Maria Jose and Marina Menegazzo so easily got into a taxi, why they were silent throughout the trip, and why they looked tired or sleepy. Their relatives described them as very cautious and responsible girls, so all of this did not match their character. Now, after conducting a toxicological analysis, it can be asserted that these men somehow drugged the girls with prohibited substances. There were many setbacks in the case. The prosecutor changed 3 times, significantly delaying the legal process. But in the end, Alberto Segundo Mina Ponce and Aurelio Eduardo Rodriguez were sentenced to 40 years in prison. However, the case did not end there. After the trial and the guilty verdict, a new investigation had to be conducted. Let me remind you that there were several DNA samples found in the house that had not yet been identified. 2 more arrests were made, but one of the suspects was fully acquitted, as the DNA tests came back negative, and he also had a very strong alibi. Another person involved in this crime was brought to trial because his DNA gave a positive match. This man's name is Jose Luis Perez. Recall that Maria Jose was found by a man who supposedly entered the area to relieve himself. That man turned out to be Jose Luis Perez. He had already testified in the case against El Rojo and Mina Ponce as a witness, but now he had to sit in the defendant's chair. His defense was simple. He had lived in that house a few weeks earlier, and the blood found on the wall was the result of a dental infection he had suffered. He supposedly just spat on the wall. His lawyers also claimed that his DNA found on the girls' bodies had undoubtedly been transferred from a piece of furniture or an object he had touched in the house, which Maria and Marina had also touched. The defense of this man began to crumble when his dentist came to testify. Jose Luis Perez did indeed visit him, but 2 weeks after the murders. He asked for a certificate stating he had a dental infection. However, the dentist refused to give it to him because, after examining him, he found that everything was fine. The man said that Jose Luis Perez insisted, but in the end, he just kicked him out. At these words, the man's defense fell apart. On top of that, it was too much of a coincidence that he found the first girl's body. It was a very long process, and only in November 2019 was a verdict reached against Jose Luis Perez. For the murder of the girls, he will also have to serve 40 years in prison. One could say that this case is solved, but it is only half solved, because there are still DNA samples that need to be identified. Besides, there are still many questions left unanswered. What happened that night and early morning of February 23rd in that house? What happened to the girls? What happened to Marina during those 2 days when Maria Jose was already dead? Were there other people involved? How were they kidnapped? How were they captured? Was all of this planned? All these questions remain hanging in the air, and the families of both girls continue to fight for justice in this case.
Thanks for watching, friends. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm always interested in your opinions. Subscribe to my channel, there's much more to come. See you next time.